I miss my wife, Tails. I miss her a lot. I'll be back.
Hi Gallagher Nation, how are we right now? I won't lie, I did anticipate he had a sense of doom about him, one or another. I didn't mean that I wanted it to be right though. Turns out that we were right in a lot of our theories, but at the same time, not quite. I'd say maybe a 60 to 70% mark. Not bad though, I'd say we've done pretty well to uncover the mystery of Gallagher. Now, what else is there to say about Gallagher? I thought we could collate everything learned from 2.2 and compare it to what we've already theorized. See what was right, what was off, and what was almost on the money. Now, if this is your first video from this channel, I do recommend watching the previous 2 theories on Gallagher I made, where I discussed the evidence and analysis that led to my current line of thinking about Gallagher being a meme and his servitude to the Watchmaker. And hey, maybe you can see which parts I was spot on and which ones were close but no cigar. And what if I tell you that we're not quite done with the mystery of Gallagher just yet? Well, let's wrap up the entire mystery that has plagued us ever since his drip marketing and inception, and what makes him so interesting. Let's resolve the mystery of who's Gallagher? Part 1. Who's Gallagher? Within the last 2 videos, I made the theory that Gallagher is a mimetic entity created by Mikhail the Watchmaker. I also made theories and conjectures towards Gallagher's role in the story and the supposed timeline of his life. Now that we've met the end of it, let's fix up this timeline with what we know and what we can assume. Last video I made a theoretical timeline of Gallagher's life from his inception to current point of his story, so I think the best point is to start from there. Sometime after the War of Independence, Mikhail Char Legwork, a nameless with the powers of Enigmata, alongside Rosalina and Tiernan, his fellow nameless, stay in Asdana to help the rebellion alongside Hanunu, now posthumously known as Brother Hanu. They do their duties in aiding the post-war recovery and in resolving the Stellaron crisis in Asdana. Perhaps for the sake of it, or perhaps he wanted a constant guardian and companion, he used the same powers used to create Clocky when he was a child to create a Doberman puppy. This puppy, mischievous and a little terror, biting everything in sight, was Gallagher. Now, I'm going to put an asterisk on this segment of the timeline because there's an interesting diverging point in this that comes into light when you've played through Scorched Sand Vacation and if you've seen the loading screen for Gallagher. However, to keep with the flow of the video, I will address this later. Regardless, if Mikhail created Gallagher remains vague and not addressed. All we know is that Gallagher calls himself a history fictionologist and Mikhail's deputy. That much is abundantly clear. There's also another asterisk we can address now. Mikhail adopted many children, Micah and Mimosa being the most noteworthy examples. When Gallagher in Why Do the Heathen Rage calls himself one of the Watchmaker's children, with hindsight we could assume that Gallagher was one of Mikhail's children, similar to Micah or Mimosa. However, I don't agree that Gallagher was one of his adopted children like those two, and rather he's one of his quote-unquote children by merit of being a mimetic creation like Clocky and Misha, or even by merit of being one of his followers. From what we can see and infer from the limited interactions between Mikhail and Gallagher, whether during his life or post-mortem, Gallagher addresses and treats him with the respect of a long-standing friend, like 2 old men delivering jabs to each other. There is no parental reverence or respect evident in the style of writing or dialogue within them like with Micah or Mimosa. Misha, in the voice of Mikhail, also addresses an old friend, which could be Tiernan or Gallagher, and he refers to Gallagher as his hound more than anything. Micah and Mimosa also address him as their father, while Gallagher often addresses him as old man. I'm aware in some parental dynamics, the child sometimes addresses their father as an old man in jest. Sometimes I do that. But I don't think that's what's happening here. Keep in mind as well that first and foremost, Gallagher is known as the Watchmaker's hound, and I think it'd be weird to have one of your children be your pet dog at the same time. I mean, we do call ourselves fur parents and our pets fur babies, but I don't think that's a dynamic here. Also, if you go to the cafe owner Jessie, she talks about an elderly man and his old dog who spend their day together at her cafe, which sort of solidifies a lot about Gallagher and Mikhail's dynamic, as well as Gallagher being a dog. I know a lot of people probably didn't make this connection, but I still wanted to cover as much ground as possible, and one of those is that retrospective connection to Mikhail's children and Gallagher calling himself one of his quote-unquote children. Back to the timeline. I propose that sometime after Tiernan departs to help the Lampmoth family repair the Silver Rail and is presumed dead, perhaps in sensing or resonating with Mikhail's longing and guilt over not following Tiernan to his bitter and lonesome end, he developed a human appearance with likeness to Tiernan. Something has to explain why he has some resemblance to the man. Regardless of intent, Gallagher can now become a human and a dog interchangeably at will, similar to how Black Swan can transform herself into different forms of matter like pixels on a screen to a painting. As time passed, Gallagher developed his appearance from 52 family members, either out of the sake of it, to ease out of that strong resemblance to Tiernan, or to be a sort of spy to blend into the family, who slowly started to conflict with Mikhail's intentions and ideals. The dynamic between Mikhail and Gallagher hasn't changed. There's still an old man and his loyal hound, but as a human he can also serve as his real deputy. Keep in mind that when Himiko fact-checked Gallagher's recounting of history with Micah, the only thing that was not true was that Gallagher was never welcomed back into the family, meaning he was never an official employee of the Bloodhound family. This explains why no Bloodhounds recognized him. It's very likely that Gallagher used his powers of Enigmata to alter their memories, when necessary in order to corroborate his lie. Keep in mind there's evidence that Mikhail used powers of Enigmata to alter people's memories of him, so it's very likely Gallagher used his own powers for the same purpose. In collaboration with the family, Mikhail became the watchmaker and they started to develop the dreamscape, developing the Penacony that we know of this day to drum up outside recognition and to get their foothold into resources and economy. Around the same time, Mikhail started to leave Asdana with the intention to send out invitations to their newly developed Penacony and Dreamscape, with the hopes of reconnecting with the Express. In Mikhail's absence, the family went through a furious civil strife with each other in a desperate hold of power, leadership, and order. With Gopherwood, a secret follower of Anna the Order, head of the Oak family, who became the Dream Master uniting the families, the harmonious dreamscape became an illusionary hive mind, feeding and leeching off dreamers who continue fueling their intended goal of Anna's dream. Interestingly enough, Gopherwood is depicted as Old Man Wood in the Clocky cartoons, a sage-like old tree man who accepted Clocky's pleas to work together and stabilize Dreamville. But eventually Old Man Wood's own ideas of order and stability overshadowed Clocky, and he bent Dreamville to his will. This is shown when you play through the Dreamjoy memoir event. Mikhail returns from his travels in horror, realizing the true nature of the family and their horrific intentions. In exposing their crimes, he garnered a small band of followers, and they were deemed traitors of the family. This is the egregious sin Gallagher speaks of, and why the Watchmaker was exiled in Why Do the Heathen Rage? Now, recall that Gallagher explains he personally had betrayed Mikhail by doing nothing. This is not addressed ever again in the story, and no one explains why. My interpretation with the full picture could possibly be that he probably did nothing to aid or corroborate with Mikhail's confrontation against the family. But that doesn't make sense either. As you read through his dialogue and discussions with Mikhail, he was very proud of serving him even when it meant being ostracized and discriminated against as well. Could it be that he stood by and let Mikhail leave Penacony on numerous fruitless journeys, even at the detriment of Dreamflux Reef and the 12 Dreamscapes? This also seems pretty plausible. Gallagher uses the powers of Enigmata to harness the primordial dreamscape into a safe haven for Mikhail and their supporters, with Orla of the original Dreamweavers weaving the city that would become Dreamflux Reef. This would be their own dreamscape, separate from the family and the Order's dreamscapes, and could only be reached through the impossible of quote-unquote dormancy, a loophole Gallagher took advantage of by creating the meme, known above as something to death, but its true name was dormancy, and it would be their ferryman, the Charon that would guide people to the elusive Dreamflux Reef. When I joke that with all the visual and thematic connections to dormancy, that pets often resemble their owners, I didn't expect that to be correct. But it entirely explains Gallagher's connections to something unto death, now known as dormancy. Though Gallagher definitely has unique aesthetic tastes. And they are perfect. Sleepy is just a funny looking dog. Now, on the part of Gallagher creating a sentient mimetic creature and an entire fucking dreamscape, I'm sorry, I will not shut up about this. This is Ning Wang levels of power level. We should probably discuss if Gallagher is an actual fictionologist by name or just loosely by the merit of his powers and nature. To put it simply, as defined by the loading screen passage for fictionologists, they are emissaries of the Aeon mythos, dedicated to fabricating, obfuscating, destroying, and erasing the histories of the cosmos. With quote-unquote enigmata as their sole philosophy, they determine to shroud the universe in mists. Gallagher himself expresses his entire belief system is based upon the enigmata, often addressing the beliefs of the nameless from an external point of view. As he puts it, being an enigmata follower means he holds no faith or belief system, the equivalent of being agnostic or atheist. But he understands the sentiments and the drive of the nameless. His entire motivation is to be loyal to Mikhail and to seek an enjoyment out of the drunken foolishness of the present. It's succinctly put by the beginning quote of the fictionologist's databank entry. Quote, "History is not mired in truth. Reality can be distorted. We should let the past cease to stay in the past. It only exists in here and now, in our brains, where everyone can embellishment." End quote. The 5 Millennia Void by history fictionologist Ludicon. It's entirely possible that Gallagher developed his own incentive to believe in fictionology, perhaps being a virtual character aided in that philosophy. But I feel like I want to better explore it later after we create this timeline. After all, I'm sure at this point you're all screaming at the screen about a quote-unquote certain history fictionologist. In the databank regarding history fictionologists, it's said they're emanators of the enigmata. However, at the bottom there's a citation made that there has been tampering in this entry, so take that claim with a grain of salt. Regardless whether they're emanators or not, they're considered dangerous by numerous facets of the cosmos because of their power and intention of obscuring and destroying history, so their power is not to be underestimated. Am I claiming that Gallagher or whoever created him is an emanator? Again, who knows? I feel like it's besides the point to consider otherwise. It's part of the mystery after all. Time passes and Mikhail ages. He continues his work being an absolute pest to the family, and he makes a final Hail Mary plan to expose the family's corruption and their malicious intent. He asks Gallagher to distribute invitations to multiple factions to attend the Charmony Festival, anticipating he likely would not live long enough to see that plan come into fruition. He creates a dream bubble which encases a snapshot of his childhood awe and wonder influenced by his seafaring family, his desires to see the world and become an adventurer. Within it is his final will and testament to the generation of nameless Gallagher sends his way, his true legacy, his compass that he always thought was a pocket watch, so they can always find their way forward, and his hat, which was inherited from one of the previous navigators of the Express, Falcon Amundsen, as well as the answer they will soon need within a letter. Within this dream bubble is a mimetic creation, a young boy, Mikhail in his childhood, a personification of where his dream to become a nameless and seek the Trailblaze began, Misha. Gallagher creates invitations to numerous factions, the IPC, the Memo Keepers of the Garden of Recollection, the Mars Fools, the Intelligentsia Guild, the Annihilation Gang, but most importantly, the Astral Express. As Mikhail puts it, make sure to send an invitation to the Astral Express. Within the invitations is a secret message to seek out the Watchmaker's legacy, a lie made by Gallagher in order to stir the pot and get these factions to start flipping things over to seek the truth as intended. While he invited these other factions to do just that, he also needed to make sure the Astral Express came in order to inherit Mikhail's final will, his true legacy, and to ensure they absolutely sought the truth and finished what Mikhail started. I don't know how, but perhaps through mimetic fuckery of the mind, he monitored and watched over the Express from all the way to Himiko repairing the train to the present. As the Express arrive, the familiar sound resonates with Misha in his dream bubble, causing him to escape alongside his imaginary friend Clocky. It explains that when Gallagher checked the bubble, he found it to be empty. The story progresses as it is, Gallagher serving as a guide with hints and riddles for the nameless to seek the truth. They encounter something unto death and discover the murders of Firefly and Robin. But now, with clarity and context, Dormancy was just making some little oopsies. Robin personally investigates why her voice of harmony is off, and decides to investigate the potential mutiny within the family that would have caused this disarray. Her conclusion led to Gallagher, who either used his power or dormancy to transport her to Dreamflux Reef, where she had been for the entire time. Sunday confronts Gallagher about the murder of his sister, putting all his cards on the table and accusing him of everything, being the amalgamation of 52 family members, being a follower of the Enigmata, and having a connection to something unto death. Gallagher goes, "Fine, fuck you then," and summons dormancy to send Sunday into the depths of Dreamflux, where he can see the truth for himself and reunite the siblings. Gallagher tells the entire truth to everyone. The truth of the Stellaron, the dreamscape, the fate of the nameless trio that stayed in Asdana, and Mikhail's legacy. He guides the Nameless to Mikhail's final resting place, and they uncover the secret to unlocking it, or to filling it back up. With the Nameless fully realized in their purpose and drive to liberate Penacony, much like how they did Amber eras ago during the War of Independence, Gallagher can finally deem his job complete. As he puts it, once a fictional character is fully realized, they cease to exist. His purpose fulfilled, he stands by his master, Mikhail Char Legwork, and gives a final toast to the Nameless, to the imperfect tomorrow, and he ceases to exist. A man and his dog, while imaginary, he is fiercely loyal. This is the story of the lie of Gallagher the Hound. And before I finish this segment, want to know something eye-opening? With Misha's existence in reality as he greeted the Trailblazer being the very catalyst into realizing they had been in the dream since the beginning, what if I told you it wasn't just Misha alone that was the anomaly that proved everything was a dream within a dream? We established in the previous video that these hound statues were mimetic creations of Gallagher that were likely used for reconnaissance and surveillance. It's even more abundantly clear when you see the Doberman, or perhaps even Gallagher in his dog form, in the Harmony Trailblazers art. And when you return to Gallagher's final resting place, next to Mikhail is a hound statue facing him. When interacting with it, it brims with pride. It was a long and tiring journey for Gallagher, but finally, with his duty and reason of existence fulfilled, he can proudly go with a bang. As he puts it, if longing for freedom means going to hell, then he will be joining Mikhail soon in hell. Knowing that these hound statues belong to Gallagher, then remember there was one hound statue that existed in quote-unquote reality. It sat in Trailblazer's hotel room. As Black Swan explains, mimetic entities created in the memory zone cannot exist in reality. Both ceasing to exist aside, it also explains how Misha and Gallagher could text the Trailblazer in the first place, and how Misha could even visit the Astral Express. It's because they were all within Enna's dream, meaning that even Gallagher left a hint to the Trailblazer that not everything is all as it seemed. And there was another thing that struck me. When I make these videos, what often struck me to finally sit down to write the script and prepare everything was often a massive eureka moment. For the first Gallagher video essay, it was the discovery of documents that hinted at the Watchmaker's power of Enigmata, and fictionologists being able to create memes. For the second Gallagher video essay, it was the realization that one of the powers of the Enigmata was being able to obscure memories, which would explain how Gallagher managed to finesse his way in and out of being a bloodhound or not. And for this third and final video, it was the realization of the hound statue in the Reverie in reality. But remember the 2.1 version trailer? Let me play it for you.
Here's to you, sober one, with this glass of a dream within a dream.
What did he say? Here's to you, sober one, with this glass of dream within a dream? You're fucking with me, right? Part 2. Who's Gallagher? In some of my comments from my previous two videos and a community post scattered about, and in my sleeping mumblings during my 2.2 playthrough supercut, a lot of thematic parallels can be made between Gallagher, Dreamflux Reef, and Dormancy to the Underworld, Charon, and Cerberus. The role of Dormancy was to be a ferryman between the 12 dreamscapes and Dreamflux Reef. It was made with the use of a loophole from the laws of the dreamscape that considered dormancy to be impossible. The idea of sleeping and dreaming within a dream. It guides its passengers through a sea of memoria and the dreamscape to the Dreamflux Reef. the underground, haven, and final resting place for the Watchmaker. Charon, in Greek mythos, is the son of Erebus and Nyx, tasked to be the ferryman guiding the deceased souls across the river Styx and the primary river Acheron. I'd note, yes, Acheron herself serves the same role, if not greater, and literally, and is described by many as a psychopomp, an entity who serves as a guide for souls to their final resting place. Dormancy takes more of the literal role of Charon. Consider it to be the boat. It's still the bestest, weirdest looking dog ever, though. With all the death and hound symbolism, Gallagher can be seen as Cerberus, the three-headed guard dog of the underworld. Interestingly enough, he could also be seen as a churchgrim. Churchgrims hail from English and Scandinavian traditions as guardians and protectors of churches from malicious entities and forces. They are mostly depicted as a black dog, but they can take numerous forms. Sounds like someone we know, right? Considering Gallagher's role as the guardian and protector of Dreamflux Reef, which contains the final resting place of Mikhail and the tombstones of the other two nameless, Rosalina and Tiernan, it makes sense. I also propose Gallagher can be paralleled with another chthonic entity, Hades, god of the dead and underworld. Consider that Gallagher himself is the creator of Dreamflux Reef's dreamscape, and while there's no established authority, keep in mind that while Mikhail lived there till his end, he was just a resident much like any other person. The two closest in guardianship and authority would be Gallagher, its creator and the creator of the ferryman, and Micah the gravekeeper. When Firefly spoke to Trailblazer in the beginning, she says that everyone speaks of a familiar name, Gallagher. With that in mind, we can make that connection between Hades and Gallagher. You can also consider the myth of Persephone's abduction in loose parallels. Robin was investigating the source of disharmony, and likely either came across Gallagher or dormancy in her investigation, and she was taken to the underworld, Dreamflux Reef. The quote-unquote death of his beloved sister distressed Sunday, even when other political figures dissuaded him from investigating her death. Who can blame him? Robin is all he had, and her happiness was his own. Demeter, mother of Persephone, was beside herself with grief and despair at the disappearance of her daughter. Eventually, her persistence and actions led to the reunion of her daughter, despite the tragic realization that they would never be bound by the hip ever again, as Persephone had eaten the pomegranate seeds of the underworld. At Sunday's pushing and accusations, Gallagher sent Sunday to Dreamflux, reuniting him with Robin, who had been peacefully existing, and even helping the children who presided there. However, the reunion was their only true happy moment, as the actions orchestrated by Gopherwood and an indoctrinated Sunday would forever keep the siblings separate. It's no coincidence that Gallagher had so many nods to death and transformation, visual connections to dormancy, mimetic traits, and even his physical makeup aside, Gallagher's quote-unquote "I'm 13" phrase connects him to the major arcana death, which represents change, transformation, and the transition between endings to new beginnings. I know in each video I keep repeating this part of his lore, but it's really important to go back to it with each new revelation about him. Gallagher's actions were the catalyst for everything, leading to Penacony's liberation from the Order's corruption. I think that perfectly aligns with major change, and going from an end of an era to a new beginning. Keep in mind too that Gallagher's name means foreign help in Irish. On the Watchmaker's final request, he sent these invitations and stirred the pot, luring everyone with honey, only to give him a mystery that needed unraveling. And it took the help of numerous factions and different people of different paths to do so, whether they were invited in the first place or not. Change comes for everyone, much like death itself. It's an unstoppable force of nature, and it's exactly what is feared by the fanatics of the Order, because it tramples over kings. It disregards authority and laughs at their face as it keeps marching on. In the book, A Complete Guide to the Tarot by Eden Gray, she quotes the following passage. Quote, "Death is a protest against stagnation. It is by death that social changes for the better come to pass and old ideas give way. With the new generation, new ideas gain currency as youth moves into maturity. This card is a suggestion to change old concepts for new, to change rigid intellectual patterns. Petty prejudices, ambitions, and opinions gradually die. The change from the personal to the universal view is so radical that mystics often compare it to death. But death is the twin brother of life. Creation necessitates its opposite, destruction. As spirit descends into matter, so it must return to its source. Death is half of the universal transforming principle, but spirit is immortal. Thus humanity can never die, for the destroyer has become the creator. You also see why Gallagher is an abundance unit now? Why he's a healer in spite of his offensive playstyle? Why quote-unquote death is so integral to his character? In orchestrating the death of the current dreamscape, people are now liberated and can wake up, allowing themselves once more to make the choice to sleep once more and dream, liberating the birds trapped in their cages, seeing off heroes and honoring their sacrifices. None of this wouldn't have happened if Gallagher hadn't sent those invitations as he was asked to. Why Mikhail entrusted him with this final hope. He's a follower of the Enigmata. He holds no prejudice or faith. He disregards the past and leaves it as the past, but honors those who have been lost to history. He laughs at the face of order and authority, raising a toast to life, and readily faces freedom and even death. He's not exempt from its rules either. Nature sheds, and in place is a new skin, regrown fur, buds ready to pollinate and blossom. Gallagher heals as much as he takes. Many characters represent death in this chapter. There are those who embody it, those who govern over it, those who seek it, those who fail to avoid it, those who face it with pride and determination. Death means change. Death is what gives life meaning. Death causes sorrow, trauma, guilt. The fear of it creates tyrants, victims, or tragic heroes. Gallagher, much like how he is many facets of Penaconian people, their culture, their dreams, and their history, embodies all those things. He is 13. He is death. He is change. Part 3. Who's Gallagher? I promised I would get to an important part later in the video, and I think the time is now. Now, all this time I had been operating under the belief that Mikhail used his powers of the Enigmata to create Gallagher. But what if I propose an alternate idea? A different origin story? It wouldn't be marginally different, and nothing changes in the grand scheme of things. But it does change one thing. Who created Gallagher? In the loading screen about Gallagher, it states, quote, "The loyal hound of the watchmaker, a character concocted by a certain history fictionologist based on various facts in Penacony," end quote. I will not read the last sentence unless you want to watch how hard I can cry. While Mikhail harnesses the powers of Enigmata, wouldn't you find it odd that they would just state him by name if it was him who created Gallagher? Why be so obscure in word choice? By using certain, it feels like it's implied that we should know who this is, or that it's a particular fictionologist that we may get to know in the future. Keep in mind too, Gallagher's second line about Misha, where he says the following.
I met Mikhail. He was already grown up. But whatever the case, Misha's still here. He spent his whole life with me. And for that, I should be glad.
I'll cry about this later. But it probably confirms that Gallagher was likely not a creation of Mikhail, like what I said ages ago, as the word quote-unquote met is used. Let me direct you to the quest, Scorched Sand Vacation. The quest involves you helping Mr. Ideen in searching for missing crew members working on an upcoming film dedicated to Trailblazer's journey. Alongside a mimetic projection of Firefly, you go through the competition once more, choosing the options you didn't pick in your first run. In the place of Argenti is Dormancy, lamenting and in distress over Gallagher's disappearance, croaking his name out repeatedly. It eventually calms down and disappears. This admittedly broke my heart, and I won't lie, it made Gallagher's quote-unquote death feel all the more real, as he left behind a lot. It shows the close connection Dormancy had with Gallagher, the implications that, in spite of having one purpose and goal, he still had a life, he had friends, He had hobbies and passions, and he treated dormancy as his own pet and friend. I miss my wife, Tails. I'll be a mourning widower later. Now, in the final room where you had your first showdown with Sunday lies a tape. The tape plays as if it's in an active conversation with you, asking you how you found the film you're currently in. It talks about how they found the filming of this to be dull, how confining it was, and in turn, didn't want any form of credit to them. They then say the following, quote, "Do you feel it now? Most people's lives are as uninteresting as this perplexing film, where they always follow some kind of script. That script may be called habits, or rules, or destiny. Outstanding actors are always pigeonholed into vacuous roles, forced to repeat monotonous lines and experience the same vapid scenes and beats over and over, making the same limited choices over and over again, before finally departing in numbness. Only when the curtain falls upon life can they shed the tackiness of this script. But leaving the stages, actors will often face an end worse than death, being forgotten by the audience." They then sign off the tape with this, quote, "I hope you won't give me such a boring performance. My lens is upon you. Don't let me down. And more importantly, don't let the audience down." End quote. The screen turns to black, and this quote appears. "We will keep playing our roles, drunken and foolish in the moment, playing at life but never thinking to celebrate it." The credits roll, with particular emphasis on the director being the name Dr. Reka. But more importantly, in the special thanks is the name Gallagher, with crosses in the beginning and end, indicating his death. Now, what's interesting is that when you talk to Mr. Ideen afterwards, he clarifies as much as he can, explaining that this is a memory film for the Trailblazer to reenact their glory and to hopefully open it to the public to experience too. He explains that dormancy was in a fragile state when it turned up in Moment of Scorched Sand and was captured to be used in Argenti's place. But at Trailblazer's reprimand, he agrees to let it go. Which probably means that dormancy, much like how Gallagher described himself as a lost dog, looking for his master in Why Do the Heathen Rage, is doing the same as it searches for Gallagher. Which is fucking devastating. He also explains that Dr. Reka is an eccentric if not extremely talented filmmaker that he enlisted to create this memory film. Finally, you ask of Gallagher, but he says he's never heard of this man, regardless of dialogue choice, meaning the inclusion of Gallagher was likely under his nose. This quest seems to be what I call Gallagher's own final will and testament. And what did he leave behind? One final mystery. Something I found interesting, but never addressed, is Gallagher's lines about his love and celebration for life.
Life is just so beautiful. Making a drink is a sensory skill. In dreams, creating fizzy concoctions requires adding a bit of your mood. Heavier if you're troubled, touch sweeter if you're in high spirits. It's not just about mixing beverages. It's about mixing the experiences of life.
He talks about the rich experiences of life and parallels it to the richness of alcohol, being loose and carefree as if he were drunk. Interestingly enough, the final line of the tape also talks about drunkenness and the enjoyment of life as well. Overall, the tape talks about the banality of repeating the same roles, how drab and uninspiring monotony is, and laughs at the face of the script and destiny. Didn't Gallagher have a similar opinion?
You know, in the thick of things, people are blind to the grit in their eyes. Yet they can always feel it scratch. Want the answer? I'll give it to you. The whole thing is just fate playing a cruel joke on us.
Gallagher is a fictionologist too. He finds no point in faith or a belief system, and chooses to live in the moment. By virtue of being a fictionologist, he would also dislike the dependence on history, and would rather keep the past as the past. So, Who is this voice who seems to share the same philosophy as Gallagher, and likely was the one to include him in the credits in dedication? Let's talk about Dr. Reika. There are little records of Dr. Reika as of so far. What can be found is in a film review in Silver Screen Shockwave issue 280. Dr. Reika is a cosmically famous filmmaker, known for, as the review quotes, quote, realistic and delicate touches that make the viewer feel like they were walking down the protagonist's memory lane, end quote. In the bottom is an added note, commenting excitement at Dr. Reika's interest in dream bubble technology and making films. As you know, dream bubbles are created from the Enigmata. Scorched Sand Vacation is a memory film where the Trailblazer goes down memory lane and gets a hidden message from a friend that Mr. Ideen believes doesn't exist. Scorched Sand Vacation was also directed by Dr. Reika. Considering the tape's speaking manner, it's also safe to presume that the tape was left by Dr. Reika as a secret message only for the Trailblazer, and a promise that he has his eye on them, as he finds them fascinating. Does this possibly mean Dr. Ratio? Does this also possibly mean that Dr. Reika is a history fictionologist? We have very little to go on about Dr. Reika. In fact, you can call him an enigmatic figure. But there was an interesting point made by Mimosa during the Dreamjoy memoir Crest, where she says this, quote, Lady Maven once said, artists are as dangerous as history fictionologists. Their creations aren't about truth. Instead, they're about stirring up emotions, and no one can predict the impact of emotions. This is mainly referring to Mikhail's work on the Clocky films, but we can apply this to Dr. Reika just as much. I'm not implying that just because he's an artist, he's a fictionologist, but if you align his preference in depicting the unpredictable human experience, and his distaste in creating an accurate and confining retelling of Trailblazer's story when creating Scorched Sand Vacation, the idea that Dr. Reika is a follower of the Enigmata is not so far-fetched. Regardless, Dr. Reika seems to know Gallagher, and included him in the credits as a sort of personal tribute to his service. And there's no coincidence that him and Gallagher share similar views on life, history, and the human experience. Furthermore, when Gallagher talks about how he had been observing the Astral Express for an incredibly long time, even to the point Himiko had repaired the train, I'm sure you all wondered how he possibly could have done it. Perhaps it wasn't Gallagher, but Dr. Reika. After all, he had been eager to watch us for a while now. When Gallagher recounts the history of the War of Independence, he describes how the battle involved numerous people from different factions, history fictionologists included. Could it be possible that Dr. Reika was one of them, and left behind a puppy for Mikhail as a parting gift? That puppy becoming Gallagher? It seems possible, does it not? I mean, regardless of his origins, the story and his themes and values remain the same. Both sides of who's Gallagher's Enigmata baby daddy, that's weird to say, both have merits as much as they have holes. When it comes to anything of the Enigmata and Gallagher himself, we really cannot be concrete or certain. Part 5. Who's Gallagher? Can I be honest with all of you about something? In uncovering the mysteries and secrets of Gallagher, I started to grow afraid. I grew afraid of demystifying him, ruining the surprise for future players of Honkai Star Rail to come. I was concerned that in my feverish frenzy to show off my Gallagher brainworms and enthusiastically show what I found, that I sort of blew the entire operation. But I worried myself sick over fuck all, especially after the revelations made from investigating the entire point of Scorched Sand Vacation. And it's because Gallagher has way more mysteries, more questions, more holes we haven't filled or investigated or discussed. He's not an iceberg, he's the fucking Mariana Trench. Enigmata philosophy, the theme of dogs, mixology, death, how death represents change in the major arcana, how all that relates to the main story, his role in the story, his relationship with Mikhail, his impact, 13, Dobermans, dormancy, mimetic entities, Penacony itself. How does one man, one virtual character, have so much? Then I remembered a line, and it made everything all clear. And by clear, I mean as clear as a stained glass window can be.
Contents, I found nothing inside. Maybe some Trailblaze runes? Even more mysterious than me.
I remember talking to a friend about Gallagher when I made this statement. It's crazy that the mystery of Gallagher is literally the entire point. And yeah, with Gallagher pretty much confirming what I always thought. The mystery of who's Gallagher is the literal entire point of him. We'll probably never get the true answer because the answer is the question itself. The mystery. Just as we thought, we concluded the story of Gallagher, another wrench is thrown in. A sneer and a taunt that we're not done realizing him, and that we probably never will. Keep in mind too, the Dreamweaver Orla describes him as a compulsive liar of a hound. Remember when I made a reference to Who's Lila? I want to explain on how understanding that game helped me understand the Enigmata and Gallagher. I will be spoiling the entire point of Who's Lila, so if you want to experience the mystery for yourself, I recommend you do so, either by playing, watching a playthrough, or watching some amazing video essays on the game. Also, there are themes of unreality, so if you're sensitive to that, feel free to skip to the conclusion. Who's Lila is a horror mystery adventure game with ARG elements released in 2022 by Garage Heathen. In the game, you pilot a high schooler William as you navigate his life by sculpting emotions on his face and exploring multiple facets of the in-game world and outside mysteries. The main overarching mystery is the title itself. Who's Lila? Lila herself is a femme-presenting entity who is inhabiting William's subconscious, and the entire point is finding out what she actually is. You play through the game, turning over every stone, clicking every spot, opening every file, hyperlink, and code, and reading anything and everything the game throws at you to unlock different endings in the form of major arcana. In a dedicated save file, Lila and the player stand-in, Detective Yu, discuss each ending, and Lila each time gives a teasing hint, a clue, a crumb. She exists and gains power and influence through memories, emotions, and the subconscious. The moment you encounter her, the moment she digs her claws into your mind, she'll stay there forever. She'll take the film reel that is your mind. Is she the demoness Lilith of biblical and Babylonian mythology? Is she the offspring of two powerful and all-consuming entities? Is she a meme made by the government gone rogue? Is she a tulpa made by a cult who worship her? That doesn't matter. You know why? Because the entire point of Lila is the question. The mystery of who's Lila. It doesn't matter what you think of her, how long it took for you to uncover her mystery, because by the merit of allowing her to inhabit your mind and memory, she'll keep living on. The moment you boot up the game, you remember it. You find something that reminds you of her, she'll reawaken. Back to Gallagher. This is what I mean by the entire point of Gallagher is the mystery of uncovering what he is. Until the end, we never got the answers about him up front. It was hidden beneath riddles and enigmatic statements and clues, and being hyper-vigilant about anything and everything said about Penacony. And even at the end of all that, we don't have the complete story. Just then, I offered two theories on who created the fictional character of Gallagher, and in both I explained that they both have their merits just as much as they have their holes. In the end credits, Penacony was cast as Gallagher, a nod to how he's the amalgamation of 52 family members. But it's much more than that. He encapsulates the culture, the celebrations, the ugliness, the fatigue. In bright and colorful drinks, there are those who drink it like their entire sanity depends on it. He's the cop, he's the crook, he's the bartender, the drunkard. He holds Penacony's history in the palm of his hand, both the public and all its dirty secrets. When discussing the 2.1 livestream, Gallagher was described as the shining example of an everyday resident of Penacony. Post 2.1, we said in jest as we jokingly went, "Oh yeah, he's normal and trustworthy," until now where I bet we all feel bad for thinking he was the antagonist. Gallagher being Penacony means many things, and he can't just be defined as one thing. He is everything as much as he's none of it. But something wondrous is that in being cast as Penacony, it implies that from the beginning, Penacony was on Mikhail's side till the very end. And also that Gallagher, he was made of the people, and he's for the people. The point of Enigmata is to keep questioning, to keep digging, to keep poking and prodding and reading between the lines, to see beyond the blue curtains. Fictionology doesn't care about the truth, or depicting it accurately. They depict what they please. This is why they're considered dangerous, why they're compared to artists. If we find out who Dr. Reka is, if he has more crumbs about Gallagher, I bet you not this is not the final destination. But in that I find joy. I find joy that we're not done. Even in 3 videos, we don't have all the answers. And I feel like that was the entire point of Gallagher and the Enigmata. There's this amazing video essay by the YouTuber Howard. It's an analysis of who's Lila, from the story to the entire mystery. And the intro has a quote from American Psycho that I found perfect for Gallagher. There's an idea of a Patrick Bateman, some kind of abstraction, but there is no real me, only an entity, something illusory. And though I can hide my cold gaze and you can shake my hand and feel flesh gripping yours, and maybe you can sense our lifestyles are probably comparable, I am simply not there. 2.2, in my opinion, was satisfying, especially to those of us who were following the mystery along the way. The themes of the meaning of life, existence, nihility, hope, freedom, and stability neatly contained in a chapter, and even within the conflict between 2 paths. In the end, we got most of the answers we craved and searched for. And as for us Gallagher fans, well, I suppose we'll continue asking questions, but as I emphasized before, that's the entire point. This sort of storytelling with intense subtext, metaphor, and references may not be everyone's cup of tea, and they may feel differently about this chapter, and fair enough. It's not personal. People like to drink it straight. I personally love this sort of storytelling. I love digging and searching for clues, and going down rabbit holes and reading through intense subjects in order to understand the deeper meanings. I wouldn't have made 3 video essays if I didn't enjoy it after all. I also get why people wouldn't like it, because hey, it's a lot of work. Some people don't want to pay a lot for an elaborate cocktail when they can be perfectly happy with a can of soda. Some people may not be satisfied with Gallagher's mysteries not being fully resolved, like Misha, Acheron, or even Sunday. And again, that's fair enough. And I definitely know some people are feeling very bittersweet about losing such a memorable and treasured character. I know I do. I love Gallagher a lot, as I'm sure you all know, and I'm satisfied with the questions answered and the mysteries that follow after, but I also feel very sad in losing him, even though deep down in my chest I knew he wasn't going to have an easy ending. It's like downing a delicious drink and feeling that lingering for more. I don't think I've had this much fun in analyzing a character in such a fury, and in such an intensity that I literally became a YouTuber because of it. Thank you all for the positive feedback, by the way. And I think there's something satisfying in both feeling right, but more so being rewarded for wanting to dig for more, for looking beyond the blue curtains, and to have all that neatly packaged into a sarcastic, dry-humored DILF who's also a dog boy? Well, now you're just spoiling me. So, what now? I suppose I should go back to being a widower.
Stay with me. 真夜中のドアを叩き帰らないでと泣いた
So that was my last ever Gallagher video essay, hopefully completing the trilogy. I sure hope nothing surprises me. Thank you so much for watching through all 3 of them if you did. Thank you for watching this one if you just watch it on its own. I really appreciate to all those people who have given me ideas, their own theories, especially in part 2 where it kind of supplemented a lot of my thinking there. Thank you for all of your support, and I hope I make more of these. I'll probably not make a 3-part video essay series like this ever again unless there's a character that really fucked my brain over. I have some ideas for a video I want to work on, but I feel like for that one I need some heavy academic research. Other than that, you can watch some of my speed paints, or I recently did a video where I just made 100 DVD jokes while playing Genshin's new Wind Trace event. Other than that, thank you for watching. Bye.